Good evening, friends. Operational situation by the end of the 30th of April. This will be a short summary. We will analyze the main points, but I promised you something interesting. I remember saying it yesterday and today, and of course I will say it at the end of the broadcast. According to the situation at the front, there are some forecasts that are actually an imminent reality. Well, we will start with you, of course, of the Skabinsko-Svitovsky section of the front, where active hostilities continue in our area of Kislovka. So what do we have by the end of today? We said on the previous broadcast that the Russian troops were pressing and were adding an advance to the village. Green, so they are trying to bypass Kislovka. There is a forest belt south of the football field, and they are actually aimed at it. But at the same time, there are counterattacks on the part of the APU, namely counterattacks. There is no deft defense here. So for now we need to state the situation that everything remains within the gray zone. That's about this southern area, that's where they're really pushing right now. As for the forces on the Russian side, so far they have not introduced reserves. Most likely, this is due to the fact that some forces were transferred from the AFU, involved in what they in fact. The fighters themselves reported from the field. Therefore, now the Russian side is reviewing its tactics in this sector of the front. Therefore, for the time being, they continue to press southward within the gray zone. We are moving on to the Boyar direction, and here, of course, we will talk in more detail, and for a long time. The first point, then I have reliable information, very interesting. We have already said that they concentrated forces in Bakhmut a week and a half ago. Our fighters from the field also reported that they concentrated a group, a shock fist. It is in Bakhmut, it is dozens of armored vehicles, and from that moment, that is, for a week and a half, of course, the number only increased, they are being transferred. That is, they are preparing for a very serious assault. They have a number of moments, hitches. Of course there is also the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine, which is also very firmly held in a number of areas, because Bogdanovka, let's say, Yes, we have been stating positional fighting here for a week and a half. But these positional fighting is just the same connected with the fact that the defense is very firmly held in the woods. Although for the Russian troops, entering the Orlov tract into the forest, yes, it gives a lot of opportunities to put pressure on just the same later, and on the hour itself in the Yar, and on the Eastern Canal district and so on. But before we move on to the changes, I will say one thing. There was a lot of talk about the fact that there would be a May-June offensive by Russian troops, someone called Kharkiv. Today, even Sumy direction. They report that they seem to be cooking something there. They are not cooking anything there. It will be the activity of the Drug. This is what I know for sure. But just the same, where they will strengthen, there are two directions. This is the Pokrov direction, and this is the Yarskoy direction. Here they choose between them, or again, maybe it is already a ready-made direction, where they will clearly carry out these offensive actions. And they will use very serious forces. But again, there is counterintelligence on both sides, and there is a lot of misinformation, moles and so on. Therefore, different materials are submitted, but conditionally there are two directions today. Most likely, despite the positionality that we see, yes, it is more likely that they will go to the Yar for an hour. And most likely it will be, well, someone says they can carry out offensive actions here until the 9th of May. Although it may all start in June. But in general, based on that information, those who were trained for attack aircraft reserves from the Russian side are large. According to motivation, this is a separate issue there, but in general, those who have been trained use these forces not to attack or make some new direction hot, yes, assault. This is only an enhancement. And now there are two directions in which they can start to reap, either Pokrovskaya or Chasovskaya. Well, the information that I had was most likely Chassiar, according to that information, although I'm more inclined to Pokrovsky. Why did I tell you yesterday on the daytime broadcast that those who are already real military experts, those who see everything and understand perfectly well, they already see what's there, they are preparing for this particular moment. Now let's look at the changes. It means that Russian troops carried out assault operations in the southern part of the Golyabovsky to Stupki Reserve, to the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Actually, on the part of the AFU, the Slavic Brigade published footage of fire strikes just the same on the infantry, where the infantry stormtroopers in general struck several blows at the pipes themselves at the canal. There are several pipes here, and they were hiding under them. We added a gray zone because previously, the Russian troops failed to catch on and gain a foothold in this area, where they conducted, well, actually, these very pipes that pass through are visible here they are. They failed to gain a foothold, but we do not know whether they retreated to their original positions, because there is still a forest area here, as you can see, or they have advanced positions somewhere near the channel itself. This remains to be clarified. Therefore, a gray zone has been added so far. But we have said that it is very important for them to move forward, including the Orlov Tract, and subsequently put pressure on the Novi Chasoyara microdistrict, yes, but only from the forests, and with the widest possible coverage. In other words, this is what they planned. But this, as they say, we will see. So far, we are talking about active hostilities on the territory of the Stupki Golubovsky to Nature Reserve. At the same time, there are reports, of course, that pressure is also being put on the northern part. They managed to repel it here. But they are making a lot of attempts, I must say. So it means that with regard to the Boyarsky, we turn to the Pokrovsky direction. We have some small changes here. The first is self-delineation. Let's start with it already mentioned once, although it is necessary with Novokalinivaya ceramics. Pocheratina. They are still pushing in the northeast direction. Clarifications have been added here in the form of a red zone. 2 situations were added minimally to the end of the day. Well, as reported, fighting continues in the area of the district of hydraulic builders, and, accordingly, the garage cooperative. That is, there is pressure on this site. And that's what concerns this area. If we are talking about the school territory, and the northern part remains, yes, this area remains under clarification. Because where there is a red zone, I added to you, although I saw our centers today, also associated with fighters from the field. Draw a red zone here, these 2 sections. I don't have any information yet. As for Novokaliniv's ceramics, active fighting continues. There have been many reports of natural misinformation today. Let's just say that the main focus is still on the fortified area. That is, the capture of which, or at least if they manage to even take half of it, they will be able to close the remaining part of Novokaliniv, the western one, in this way. And accordingly active hostilities are taking place here, including pressure in the northern direction of ceramics. Active assault actions are also taking place in the settlement itself. Although the situation here is also changing, so far for the worse. I will say it will be a minus tomorrow, most likely. As for Solovyev's Q, a little red zone has been added here, just along the forest belt. And the T-shaped interchange has moved to the red zone. The situation for yesterday, or rather for this morning, and by the end of the day, yesterday for today. Now as for the Pokrovsky direction. I will also tell you a little more in detail here, as well as about the hours of Yarsky. So, a lot of military experts now, especially Western ones, say that Russian troops are moving north. They will move just the same to the interchange of the highway to Konstantinovka, and so on, that it is very important for them to take this area, and accordingly in this way they will worsen logistics, although not quite I agree with this. They will worsen, yes, but not just catastrophically. This is the first moment, and something will move in this direction. This is definitely not the case, because according to the information that I have, it is absolutely reliable. They are now covering just the same flank position, with this advance northwest of Osheretin. Because they will go by rail in the direction of Novogrodovka, the city of Novogrodovka, well, conditionally so far we are talking. Their main plan is to enter the operational space, but for this they still need Nottailova and Karlovka. And now it is reported that they are increasing pressure now on Nottailov. There were also active assault operations there today, within the gray zone. There were reports from the fighters themselves directly, who take part in the fighting on this sector of the front, that here they are going to the reservoir, let's say so. For now, let it be like this on the map. The main goal for the reservoir is, of course, Karlovka. And that's when they, as they plan the worst option, take Karlovka, yes. Then accordingly try to increase pressure in the northern direction, conditionally in the direction of the railway. But we will look at it in fact, because it's very early to talk about anything now. We are talking about the most pessimistic scenario, but do not forget that ammunition will have to arrive on the battlefield as soon as possible. This will definitely change the situation to some extent. But why? Yes, I say that it will change the degree to some extent. I give you such a positive hope. Despite the fact that Kirill Budanov himself, yes, says that it will be a very difficult May-June. In fact, this is so because again, on the one hand, we can achieve parity on the battlefield very quickly, definitely, yes. Given the situation that exists today. But I have already voiced to you, they have prepared these forces, and yet, yes, they will go. But it will not be a general offensive of some kind in a new area, but where there are already active hostilities. They will strengthen very large pressure forces, and with the number of armored vehicles. And so far it is being decided, either this is a Pokrovsky attempt to enter the operational space. But I would not even say that it will be Pokrovsk or Mirnograd. This is the city of Novogrodovka, or the village of Grodovka. These limits are being considered. Or Yar, which is much more dangerous, because I said it's still a strategic settlement, altitude, and so on. It's too early to talk about anything yet, all the time will tell. And that's just due to the fact that they will increase the pressure, yes, the number of strikes will increase even more. Because they have enough ammunition. And accordingly, from our side, just the same, everything that arrives, it will, in fact, try to level the situation on that active sector of the front. Therefore, we will look, it's too early, if we talk about reliable, it's too early to predict anything. It's very early because, let's say, the enemy is preparing very much for a serious increase in pressure. And for a breakthrough, so to speak. But time will tell. As for Krasnogorovka, I will also comment a little on the Kurakov direction here. So, we have already said that the enemy has a goal to cut off the Solnikny microdistrict, due to the fact that they will cut it off. They will be able to increase the pressure on the main central part of Krasnogorsk in the cinema. And, accordingly, on the plant itself, which is a serious enough fortification, is an obstacle to further assault actions for Russian troops. So, today they are crushing Russian troops. We will move a little bit away from Krasnogorovka. A map from the area of Staromikhailivka, we have already said, for a hunting house, and in this direction. Approximately for this area. What does this mean? The fact that they are trying, if we take this area, there are also a couple of fortifications to advance to the road, logistics. That is, through the Lozovaya River, which leads. Well, in general, they are betting, so far we will talk about the attack vector. On what is located north of the Lozovaya Krasnogorovka River. It is also part of Krasnogorovka, the city itself, so in general, they are aimed at this area, according to the attack vector. Well, and subsequently, and accordingly along the Litska, it is similar in the north direction. But time will tell, because there are so many attacks. Naturally, the enemy is looking for a gap in the defense, pressing very seriously in the direction of the plant. There are a lot of attacks, these are not isolated, there are a lot of attacks now during the day. With the support of armored vehicles from the AFU, artillery strikes and so on, and so on. And kicks can be thrown back to their original positions, but they increase as in the case of work on the gray zone. But where we work, they were subsequently able to gain a foothold in the territory of the support. And so they are trying to create a wide gray zone as much as possible in this way. And at the same time, the more it is, yes, the more maneuvers they will carry out at the front edge of the gray zone. The more likely it is that they will be able to dig in, catch on, gain a foothold, and dig in along the face. Vachutina, well, there is no need to dig in here, I have already, by the way, to embellish the place. It means to gain a foothold along Vachutin Street, and have more advanced positions, in order to carry out assault actions. In the direction of the Krasnogorsky plant. Moving on. Further along the Kurakovsky direction, the South Donetsk section of the front without significant changes. As well as on the Veliko Novoselkovsky. But I will also comment on the work ledge here in a little more detail, and I will finish with this. So, as you remember, there were assault actions along Selskaya Street in the north direction. Already after the broadcast, I wrote in my telegram, there are several more attacks. Russian troops are attacking approximately in this area, trying to improve the tactical situation in the northern direction along several streets. I mean, what do they want? Again, the maximum gray zone, and due to this, try to catch somewhere in this area, gain a foothold. Well, here also. So far, they have not been able to do this, because the APU is returning fire, and, accordingly, retreating to their original positions. It is on the starting positions that it is not possible to catch on. But the enemy is very serious about knocking out the garrison in Jesus. The work is done, so let's just say. It is working around the clock on this section of the front, including to disrupt rotations and so on. Therefore, there is very serious pressure. There are statements, but they have nothing real now. That they managed to completely knock out the APU and so on. This is not true. Active fighting continues, very heavy in this sector of the front, but, I repeat, the Russian troops failed to gain a foothold.